Ethan stepped off the shuttle and onto the surface of the Zorthian homeworld. His boots clanked against the cold metal of the docking bay. The planet was not what he had expected. Towering alien structures reached up into the sky, the city below. Bustling with activity, air was thick with the scent of foreign chemicals. A constant reminder that this was no longer Earth. This was the heart of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. Humanity had always been considered weak in the eyes of the galaxy. Their technology was nowhere near the level of the great empires of the Zorthians or the Tlax. Their armies were small compared to the massive war machines of the other races, but they had something the others didn't: determination. It was this very trait that had led to Ethan's mission. Earth had sent him, a soldier who had been chosen for his strength, intelligence, and courage. To represent humanity in a test of power, challenge set by the Zorthian queen herself. The queen's reputation was known throughout the galaxy. She had conquered countless worlds, each more brutal than the last. Her warriors were feared, their might unmatched. But for all her power, the Zorthian queen had never faced a human before. Ethan was about to change that as the heavy doors of the docking bay opened. A tall, armored figure stepped forward to greet him. It was a Zorthian soldier, her black and silver armor gleaming in the dim light. Her eyes, glowing red, scanned Ethan with curiosity. "You are the human, Ethan?" the soldier asked, her voice a deep growl. Ethan nodded, standing tall. "That's me. I'm here for the challenge." The soldier's lips curled into a smile, one that was cold and calculating. "Follow me." Ethan followed the soldier through the narrow, winding halls of the Zorthian palace. As they walked, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. Every corner they turned, every step he took, felt like the beginning of something much larger than himself. It wasn't just about him, it was about all of humanity. If he failed, Earth's future would be in the hands of these alien conquerors. If he succeeded, humanity might finally earn the respect it deserved. They arrived at a large hall. The room was enormous, filled with alien leaders, warriors, and diplomats from across the galaxy. Ethan's heart beat faster as he stepped inside, his eyes scanning the sea of alien faces. Some were humanoid. Others were unrecognizable creatures of various shapes and sizes. They all turned their gaze to him as he entered, their eyes full of doubt and amusement. At the far end of the hall stood a throne. Upon that throne sat the Zorthian queen. Her armor shimmered with an eerie light, and her eyes glowed like burning embers. Her presence was overwhelming, her power palpable. As she looked down at Ethan, her lips curled into a slight smile. "Welcome, human," she said, her voice soft yet commanding. "I've been waiting for you." Ethan could feel the weight of her words. She had expected him, perhaps even planned for this moment. He wasn't just a soldier here. He was a symbol. It's a challenge that would either break or elevate humanity in the eyes of the galaxy. The queen stood, her movements graceful and fluid, yet full of deadly intent. She was taller than Ethan by a head, her body exuding strength. "Have watched your people for some time now," she continued. "I have seen your wars, your struggles, and your victories. But in the end, you are nothing but ants beneath our boot. You will never be able to stand against us." Ethan didn't flinch. He had trained for moments like this, moments when the odds were stacked against him. He had been chosen because of his strength, his unwavering belief that humanity was capable of more. "You think you know us," he said, his voice steady, "but you don't. We may be small, but we are not weak." The queen's eyes narrowed, her expression one of amusement. "Then prove it. Show me your strength, human. Prove to me that you are worthy of my respect." The room fell silent. Could feel every eye in the room on him. They were all waiting, judging, hoping he would fail. The pressure was suffocating, but he didn't let it show. The queen's challenge was not just a test of physical strength. It was a test of everything. It was about proving that humans had the will to fight, to survive, to push back against the overwhelming odds of the galaxy. "I accept your challenge," Ethan said, his voice echoing through the room. The queen's smile grew wider. "Good. Then let the trials begin." As she spoke, a large, glowing door at the far end of the hall opened, revealing a massive arena. The ground was a mix of harsh stone and metal, with towering obstacles designed to test even the most seasoned warriors. The first trial was about to begin. Ethan stood at the entrance of the arena, his heart pounding in his chest. The air felt thick and heavy, filled with the anticipation of what was to come. The Zorthian Queen's challenge wasn't just a test of physical strength, it was a challenge to his very spirit, to humanity itself. He had no idea what he would face in the trials. But one thing was certain. He wasn't going to back down. The Queen's voice echoed in the arena, cutting through the silence. Let the trials begin. With those words, the floor beneath Ethan's feet began to shift. Massive stone blocks rose from the ground, creating an obstacle course unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls surrounding the arena hummed with energy, and above him, a giant screen flickered to life, showing the eager faces of the alien spectators. A voice from the loudspeakers announced the first trial. Combat challenge: survive the warriors. Ethan didn't need to be told twice. As the words left the speaker, the first of the Zorthian warriors appeared. These were no ordinary soldiers. They were taller than any human, their muscles rippling beneath their dark armor-like skin. Each one carried a blade that glowed with a terrifying light, their eyes gleaming with the hunger for battle. The first warrior charged at Ethan, swinging the massive sword in a deadly arc. Ethan ducked just in time, feeling the air rush past. His face, as the blade missed by inches, his training kicked in, twisted around, grabbing a nearby piece of rubble, and used it to block a second strike. The warrior's strength was overwhelming, but Ethan's agility and quick thinking were his greatest assets. He jabbed the piece of stone into the warrior's side, using all his weight to shove the Zorthian off balance. The warrior stumbled back, surprised by the human's resilience. But this was just the beginning. Ethan knew he had to stay focused. This was no ordinary fight. It was a test, and he needed to prove he could not only survive, but overcome as he faced the next Zorthian. Warrior, the Queen's voice echoed across the arena again. Survive, human. Show me your strength. Ethan tightened his grip on his weapon, a sword that had been handed to him by one of the arena attendants. It wasn't the best weapon, but it was all he had, and that would have to be enough. The second Zorthian warrior was faster, more skilled. The blade came down in a series of rapid strikes, forcing Ethan to retreat. But he didn't give up. He wasn't going to run. He wasn't going to back down. Blocked the next strike encountered. Using his speed and strength to push the warrior back, he could hear the gasps of the crowd above him, the murmurs of disbelief. Ethan was still standing, was still fighting. With a final push, Ethan knocked the Zorthian's weapon out of its hand. He wasn't here to kill. He was here to prove that humanity could be just as powerful as any other species. The Zorthian warrior, now disarmed, stood in awe. Ethan's eyes locked with his opponent's, and for a moment there was mutual respect. The warrior raised his hand in a sign of surrender. The Queen's voice rang out again. Impressive, but this is only the beginning, human. Ethan didn't have time to rest. Before he could even catch his breath, the next trial was announced. Strength challenge: overcome the beast. The ground beneath his feet shook as a large gate opened on the far side of the arena. From the darkness beyond, a massive creature emerged, its eyes glowing like fire. It was a beast of nightmare's fur, covered in scales, claws the size of tree branches, and a mouth filled with teeth, sharp enough to tear through metal. The beast roared, shaking the very air around them. The crowd was silent now, waiting to see how the human would face this monster. Ethan swallowed hard, his mind racing. This wasn't a fight he could win with speed alone. This was about raw strength, kind of power he had never needed before. The creature lunged at him, its claws aimed straight for his chest. Ethan dodged, narrowly avoiding the strike. The arena was full of traps and obstacles, but they could work to his advantage. Ethan sprinted across the arena, leading the beast toward a large metal pillar. With all his might, he grabbed hold of a chain hanging from the pillar and swung it at the creature's eyes. The chain wrapped around its head, temporarily blinding it, The beast howled in frustration, thrashing wildly. But Ethan had only a brief window of opportunity. He dove forward, using the chain to pull himself closer to the beast. With all the strength he could muster, he drove his sword into the creature's side. The creature shrieked in pain, its claws scraping across the ground. As it tried to dislodge him, Ethan didn't let go. He held firm, pushing the sword deeper into the beast's flesh. The creature's strength was incredible, but it was no match for the human's determination. With one final, forceful push, the beast collapsed, its breath ragged and uneven. The arena erupted in applause. Ethan, covered in sweat and blood, stood over the fallen creature, panting heavily. The queen's eyes gleamed with something new respect. "You've proven your strength, human," she said, her voice softer than before. "But the final trial will test more than just your body." Ethan nodded, wiping the sweat from his brow. He knew the final trial wouldn't be easy, but if he could make it this far, there was no way he was going to give up now. The queen's voice echoed through the arena once again. "Now, human, the final test. Will you submit to your fear, or will you face the darkness within?" The dust of the arena hung thick in the air as Ethan stood, his chest heaving with every breath. The ground beneath him was stained with the blood of the beast he had just slain. His body was bruised, battered, and covered in sweat. But he was still standing, the Zorthian queen, perched high above the arena on her throne. Watched him closely, her eyes never leaving his form. She was silent, but her gaze spoke volumes. Ethan could feel the weight of her stare, the pressure mounting with each passing second. He had passed the first two trials, but the final test was yet to come. He wasn't sure what it would be, but he knew it would push him to his absolute limits. The arena fell silent as the queen's voice rang out once more, cutting through the tension in the air. "You have proven yourself, human. You have shown strength in both body and spirit. But now you face the greatest trial of all." Ethan wiped his brow, preparing himself for whatever came next. His eyes scanned the arena, searching for any sign of what might happen next, but there was nothing. The arena was still, the crowd waiting in anticipation, their eyes fixed on him. The queen slowly rose from her throne, her footsteps echoing across the hall. As she descended from the high platform, her presence seemed to grow larger, more imposing. The entire arena seemed to grow stiller in her wake, as if the very air held its breath. "Come to me, human," the queen commanded, her voice sharp and unyielding. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine as he stepped forward, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Every step he took felt like a step toward something unknown, something that would test everything he had. When he reached the center of the arena, the queen stopped before him. She was taller than him by a head, her armor shining under the artificial lights. Her eyes glowed, not with malice, but with something else, something that made Ethan feel as though she was measuring him, not just physically, but mentally. "You have shown courage, strength, and resilience," the queen said, her voice deep and commanding. "But now you must face your fear, human. This trial is not one of strength, but of your mind. You will face what you fear the most, and only by overcoming it will you truly claim what is yours." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Fear. What could possibly scare him now? He had faced beasts, warriors, and trials that seemed impossible. But the queen's words rang in his ears, and he realized something important. This wasn't just a test of his body. This was a test of his soul. Before he could respond, the ground beneath his feet trembled. The walls of the arena began to shift and warp, and a low rumbling sound filled the air. Ethan's hands clenched into fists as he steadied himself. He had no idea what was coming, but he was ready to face it. The queen stepped back, her eyes watching him closely. "Face your fear, human," she said once again.
Oh.
"Only then will you prove your worth."
Oh.
Suddenly, the arena was no longer the same. The walls seemed to stretch outward, and the floor shifted, warping into an unfamiliar landscape. Ethan blinked, trying to adjust his eyes to the change, but nothing seemed right. The arena had transformed into something else entirely, endless. Dark void. Ethan's heart raced as he looked around. The air was thick and oppressive. Space felt suffocating, as if the very atmosphere was pressing down on him. The coldness of the place seemed to seep into his bones, and then the sound came. A whisper, soft at first, like a faint murmur in the wind. But it grew louder, and the voice that followed was one Ethan had never forgotten. Ethan. His blood ran cold as the voice echoed through the dark void. It was the voice of someone he had left behind, someone he had failed to save. It was his younger sister, Olivia. No, this can't be real, Ethan muttered to himself, shaking. His head, he had buried the memory of her death deep within his mind. No, it was too painful to remember. She had been caught in an explosion during a mission years ago, and he hadn't been able to save her. The voice continued, growing louder with every passing second. Ethan, why didn't you save me? Why did you leave me behind? Ethan staggered back, his breath coming in short gasps. His chest tightened as the memories came rushing back, vivid and raw. The guilt, the regret, it all came crashing down on him like a tidal wave. The fear that he had buried so long ago now reappeared in front of him. Stop! Leave me alone! Ethan shouted, his voice shaking with anger and fear. He turned in every direction, trying to escape the voice, but it was everywhere. Was inside. Him, echoing through his mind. The Queen's voice rang out in the distance, but Ethan couldn't focus on it. Was trapped. The guilt, the fear, the overwhelming sadness, they consumed him, drowning out everything else. You failed her, the voice whispered again. You weren't strong enough. You couldn't save her. You'll never be strong enough. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes. The voice was right. He had failed. He had failed the one person he loved the most. He had promised to protect her, but he hadn't been able to. The world around him seemed to close in, the darkness growing more suffocating with each breath. But then, something inside him snapped. He was no longer going to let this fear control him. He couldn't. He had to be strong. Not just for Olivia, but for humanity. He had already overcome so much, he couldn't let this defeat him. No, Ethan whispered, his voice steadying. I'm not weak. I'll never be weak again. He took a deep breath, pushing the fear aside. The voice faded, slowly but surely, as Ethan found his strength once more. He stood tall, his fists clenched, his eyes focused ahead, the darkness around him started to lift, and the familiar arena began to reappear. The walls, the floor, the Zorthian Queen, everything was back to normal. But Ethan wasn't the same. He had faced his fear, and he had overcome it. The Queen's eyes gleamed with approval as she watched him. You have faced your darkest fear and emerged victorious, she said, her voice filled with admiration. You have earned your place. Human, you have proven your strength, not just in body, but in spirit. Ethan stood silently, his chest rising and falling as he caught his breath. He had faced the one thing he feared the most, and he had won. The Queen was right. This wasn't just about strength. It was about the strength to rise above, to keep going when it seemed impossible. You have claimed what is yours, human, the Queen said. The galaxy will never underestimate you again. Ethan's journey was far from over, but for the first time, he felt truly ready. Ready to face whatever came next. Ready to lead humanity into a future where they could stand tall among the stars. Ethan's body ached from the trials he had endured, but his mind was sharper than ever. The Zorthian Queen had tested him in every way possible, physically, mentally, and emotionally. He had faced her warriors, battled a beast far stronger than him, and even overcome his own deepest fears. Now, standing before her, Ethan realized that the true test was yet to come. The Queen's eyes were fixed on him as she descended from her high throne. Her gaze was as intense as ever, but there was something different in the way she looked at him. It was no longer just the cold, calculating look of a conqueror. This time, there was respect in her eyes, respect that few in the galaxy had ever earned from her. You've proven yourself human, the Queen said, her voice softer than it had been before. But the final trial, is not one of strength. It is one of choice. Ethan stood tall, his fists still clenched from the battle, his heart racing with anticipation. The arena was quiet now, the eyes of the galaxy's greatest warriors and leaders. Upon him, this was it. He had come this far, but the Queen's words were like a challenge in themselves. What choice would he have to make? What could possibly be harder than the trials he had already faced? The Queen took another step toward him, her presence almost overwhelming. "You've proven your strength, human," she continued. "Now, I offer you power, unlimited power, beyond anything you've ever imagined." Ethan's eyes widened. Power? What did she mean? Was this another test? Was it some kind of trick? "Join me," the Queen said, her voice calm and inviting. "Become a part of my empire. Lead with me, and together we will conquer the galaxy. You will have everything you desire: strength, wealth, respect, all the power you could ever wish. For no one would ever dare challenge us." Ethan's mind raced. He had heard the stories of the Zorthian Empire, how they ruled with an iron fist, how they conquered and destroyed without mercy. Joining the Queen meant standing alongside one of the most ruthless conquerors in the galaxy. He had seen enough of what the Zorthians were capable of. The thought of being part of such a regime sickened him. But the Queen's words lingered. Power, respect, everything he had fought for. He could finally prove humanity's strength to the galaxy. He could take his place at the top. The temptation was strong. The Queen continued, her voice soothing, almost hypnotic. "You have the strength to rule human. You've already shown that. Don't let your people's weakness hold you back. You're better than this. You deserve more than to simply fight for survival. You can have it all. All you have to do is join me." Ethan looked around the arena, the alien faces of the council watching him. They had all seen him struggle, seen him fight with everything he had. They had seen him prove his strength. Now they were waiting to see if he would take the Queen's offer. Would he choose power? Would he become just another tool of the Zorthian Empire? Thought of Earth, the people he had left behind, the soldiers who had fought beside him, his family, his friends. Would joining the Queen really be the right choice? Would it be worth it to betray everything humanity stood for? The Queen's voice broke through his thoughts. "What will you choose, human? Power or freedom?" Freedom. Ethan's heart beat harder in his chest. He knew the answer. He had always known the answer. "I choose freedom," he said, his voice steady and unwavering. The Queen's eyes flashed with surprise. For the first time, there was no amusement, no satisfaction in her gaze, only a hint of frustration. She had expected him to give in, to accept her offer of power. After all, who wouldn't want to rule the galaxy by her side? But Ethan's choice had shattered that expectation. "Freedom," she repeated, her voice cold. "You choose to remain weak? You choose to let your people continue to live in the shadow of the galaxy's true rulers?" "I choose to fight for my people," Ethan said firmly. "I choose to fight for Earth, for humanity. I choose to stand on my own, not as a pawn in your empire." The Queen's face darkened. For a moment, the entire arena seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for her to react. She took a step back, her armor gleaming in the light as she regarded Ethan with a mixture of disbelief and anger. "You have made your choice, human," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "But understand this, you will never lead an empire. You will never have the power you crave. You are nothing but a small, insignificant insect. And when your people are crushed under the weight of the galaxy, you will remember this moment." Ethan didn't flinch. He stood tall, his eyes locked on the Queen's. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't weak. He had made his choice, and no threat would change that. The Queen's gaze softened slightly, her expression shifting. She had underestimated him. In that moment, she realized that Ethan was no ordinary human. He was a symbol of defiance, of strength, the potential for humanity to stand on its own. "You are a fool, human," the Queen said, her voice tinged with respect. "But perhaps, in your foolishness, you may yet become something greater. The galaxy will not forget you. The galaxy will remember that it was you, a mere human, who dared to challenge us." Ethan nodded. He didn't need her respect, didn't need her approval. What he needed was to lead his people, to show them that humanity had more to offer than any empire could ever take away. The Queen turned away, her gaze sweeping over the arena. The Zorthian leaders who had watched in silence now began to murmur. Among themselves, Ethan had chosen freedom over power. It was a bold, unexpected move. And despite the Queen's anger, she couldn't deny that he had earned something from her, something she hadn't expected to give. "Leave now, human," the Queen ordered. "Take your people and go. Remember this: you have chosen your path. And when you face the consequences, remember that you chose freedom. The galaxy will never forget what you did here today." Ethan didn't need any more words. He turned and walked away, his head held high. As he left the arena, he knew the battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. He had made his choice, and now he had to fight for it. The moment Ethan turned his back on the Queen and her empire, the weight of his decision settled in his chest. He had made a choice, one that could change everything. The Zorthian Queen had offered him power, respect, and an empire. But he had chosen freedom for himself, for humanity. His decision wasn't just a challenge to hurt, was a statement to the entire galaxy. Humanity would not be ruled. They would stand on their own. As Ethan walked out of the arena, sounds of the crowd behind him began to swell, rising into a roar. The murmurs from the alien spectators were mixed, some of disbelief, some of admiration. The Queen's challenge had been expected to break him, to force him to bow to her will. But instead, it had forged something stronger: his resolve. Outside the arena, Ethan met with the small group of Earth diplomats and soldiers who had come with him. They had watched the trials in silence, unsure of what was happening inside. Now, they saw the determination in his eyes. They saw a leader, not a pawn. They knew at that moment that the future of humanity would be in his hands. "What now, Captain?" one of the soldiers asked. His voice was full of uncertainty, but also hope. They had all seen the power of the Zorthian Empire, and they had seen Ethan stand firm against it. They had seen humanity's chance. Ethan took a deep breath and looked toward the stars. He knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The Queen would not let his defiance go unanswered. But he also knew something else. Humanity was stronger than the galaxy gave them credit for. "We fight," Ethan said simply. "We fight for Earth. We fight for the future." The small group of humans stood tall, their faces filled with determination. The galaxy had seen the Zorthians rise to power by crushing everything in their path. But now, they had seen that humanity wasn't like the others. They weren't here to take orders, or here to lead. The Galactic Council's reaction back. On the Zorthian homeworld, the Galactic Council convened once more. The Council had witnessed Ethan's defiance, and now they were divided. Some believed that the humans' refusal to accept the Queen's offer was a foolish mistake. Others, however, saw a spark of something they hadn't expected. A spark of strength. The Queen was seated at the head of the council, her face hard and unreadable. Her eyes flicked from one alien leader to another, each one weighing in on the human's actions. "He has chosen freedom," a voice said from the Tlax, a species known for their cunning and ruthlessness. "That's a dangerous move. If we let him go, it could inspire others. If we let him continue to stand, humanity might believe they can challenge us." The Queen remained silent, her fingers lightly drumming against her throne. The room fell quiet, and everyone waited for her response. They all feared her wrath, but they also knew her respect was not easily earned. She had seen the strength in Ethan. It was not physical strength, as she had expected, but mental strength, the kind of strength that could tear down empires. "Let him go," the Queen said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of a decision that would shape the galaxy. "He has chosen his path. We will not destroy him. We'll let him return to Earth. Let humanity believe it can stand on its own." The council leaders exchanged looks. They were surprised. Most of them had expected the Queen to crush Ethan's rebellion, to put an end to the human challenge. But the Queen's words were final. She had seen the potential in the human, and she had decided that it was better to let him rise on his own. For now, the galaxy will remember this moment, the Queen said, her voice low but firm. And when humanity falls, it will not be because of strength. It will be because they failed to realize their own weakness. Back on Earth, the news of Ethan's victory, his defiance of the Zorthian Queen, spread across the galaxy faster than anyone could have imagined. Earth had never been more united. People who had once doubted humanity's place in the stars now looked to Ethan as a symbol of hope, of resistance. Back on Earth, Ethan's return was celebrated as a victory. The entire planet watched as he addressed the crowd from the steps of the United Nations building. His face was worn, his body tired, but his voice was strong. The humans who had once been overlooked and underestimated now had a leader they could follow, a leader who had stood against the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. "My friends," Ethan began, his voice carrying across the vast sea of people before him, "the Zorthian Empire, and all the powers that believe we are weak, will soon learn the truth. We are not weak. We are strong, we are capable, and we will rise." The crowd erupted into cheers. The sound of their voices was deafening. For the first time in history, humanity stood united, not as mere survivors, but as a force to be reckoned with. "We may not have the weapons of the Zorthians or the armies of the Tlax," Ethan continued, "but we have something more powerful. We have the strength of our will. We have the courage to fight for what is ours, and that is something no empire can defeat." Ethan's words were met with thunderous applause. The people of Earth had found their strength. They had found their voice. And now, they were ready to make sure the galaxy knew it too. The dawn of a new era, days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The story of Ethan's defiance spread through the galaxy. The Zorthian Empire, once the unchallenged ruler of the stars, found its authority questioned for the first time. Other species who had once feared the Empire began to look at Earth with new eyes. The humans, led by Ethan, were not just a race to be ignored. They were a force to be reckoned with. In the coming months, humanity began to build alliances. Slowly at first, but with growing confidence. The Zorthian Empire may have been powerful, but they had underestimated one thing: the strength of the human spirit. Ethan stood at the helm of Earth's first true fleet, preparing for the next step in their journey. The battles ahead would be hard. The stakes were high. But he knew one thing for certain: humanity's time had come. As he stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking out at the stars, he felt a sense of pride swell in his chest. He wasn't just leading a people who had been underestimated. He was leading a new era, and it was one that would change the galaxy forever. The journey was far from over. The battles would continue, but humanity had already proven their strength. No empire could stop them now.